Welcome to the 16th ToKini Andy Kanji lesson. Today we're going to cover the meaning, building blocks, writing, historical evolution where applicable, and a story to memorize each of the following kanji. We'll also learn the parts and radicals needed for those kanji. Today there's only one new part, and stick around to the end of the lesson where we'll be doing a quick quiz to help everything stick. By the way, check the pinned comment below this video to see why we are not learning readings for each kanji just yet. Let's get into it. We haven't covered any words yet in this series, and we still have a few more videos to cover before words. But our first kanji for today means word. Word is its own official radical, but we can break it down into three parts. Well, two parts if we're looking at computer fonts, and three if we're looking at the written form. For written form, it's a dot with a few ones and a mouth. Many computer fonts have an extra one on top instead of a dot. Since the written form of word has a dot on top, we start there, and then draw the three horizontal strokes beneath it. It should be noted that the first horizontal stroke is the longest of the three, with the ones below it written the same length as each other, for the most part. Finally, we draw the three strokes in mouth, finishing this one off. Historically, this was the kanji for tongue combined with a single one. We could imagine this as one thing that rolls off the tongue is a word, though this was not explicitly stated as why these were the parts in any of the explanations I read. It eventually evolved into its current form to better differentiate it from the kanji for tongue, which we'll learn in another video. For our story, we're going to go with a teleprompter is above mouth, and mouth says all the words that come down the teleprompter. A teleprompter, for those of you who don't know, is a piece of glass placed in front of a camera from which you mirror a script off of. You often see politicians using them during speeches, and many YouTubers use them as well. Remember that it's a good idea to pause the video after each story and really try to imagine it, or to create a story of your own that will help you remember the kanji even better. Make sure the story contains the meaning and every single part in some way. Speaking of words, they're usually part of a language, which is what this kanji means. Language. The official radical for language is appropriately word. We can break it down into three parts though: word, 5, and mouth. There are 14 strokes in language, making it by far the most stroke-heavy kanji we've covered to date. With that said, the parts are very well defined, and I don't expect you'll have much trouble with them. We start by writing word on the left. When word is in the hen or on the left position, it's usually written thinner than usual to make room for the parts on the right. In writing, the first stroke on top of word will usually be a drop, though this might not be the case in computer fonts. Anyway, we then move on to the 4 strokes in 5 and write another mouth part right below that. Despite having so many strokes, this kanji has very well-defined parts that are relatively easy to keep distinct from one another. Hopefully, you'll be able to get this one down in no time. Historically, the parts for this have not changed. It appears that the word part on the left is used to give the kanji meaning, as parts on the left often do. 5 over mouth hints at the Chinese reading of go, as parts on the right often do. Indicate reading, not specifically the reading of go. For our story, a lot of mouth characters are coming out to play. A language is words coming out of 5 mouths, represented by 5 other mouths saying words. It's the words that are the language. Finding the language in this video easy enough to follow? Hit the like button if so. We won't be getting away from the word on the left just yet, and the story for this one will be similar to the one in language. That's because this kanji means story. The official radical for story is word, which is likely not a surprise. The parts can be broken down into word, 1,000, and mouth. There are 13 strokes in story, making it just slightly less stroke-heavy than language. Just like language, though, this one is also fairly straightforward. We draw word on the left, making sure to keep it thin. As with language, in writing, the first stroke on top of word will usually be a drop, though this might not be the case in computer fonts. We then draw 1000 on the right, with the no radical stroke followed by the horizontal one and the staff through it, making sure to keep the whole part in the upper right quadrant for the most part. We then draw the mouth part below 1000 and usually connected to it. Historically, this was always word on the left and a mouth on the bottom part of the right, but it used to be this part above mouth, which on its own can mean surname or family name. For our story first story, we'll say, talking is made up of thousands of words, and stories are when the same words are said between thousands of mouths. Please share your own stories for this lesson down in the comments. It might help someone who the stories in this video did not help. That brings us to our first and only part for this lesson. This one is very easy to confuse with soil or dirt, but you'll notice that this kanji has a much longer first stroke. That makes it special. By the way, this kanji means specialist. Unfortunately, specialist is a kanji as well, though we won't be learning it for a while as one. It is its own official radical though. It can also be considered its only part. There are only 3 strokes in specialist, which are essentially the same as those in dirt, except that the first horizontal stroke in specialist is much longer and must at least be longer than the third stroke, which is the horizontal one on the bottom. This kanji was apparently supposed to be a pictograph of a broadaxe. Apparently the blade part is the bottom horizontal stroke, with the handle being the first horizontal stroke. I kind of think this one taught to kids in old Japanese class looks like a fantasy or Monster Hunter style broadaxe. Handle straight in the air, blades on either side resting in the dirt below, with the handle of the axe leaning on the hunter or something. For our story, we're going with pictograph of a broadaxe like this one. It takes a specialist to use a broadaxe like this. I know it probably seems like we just learned this fully as a kanji, and we kinda did, but when I say we're only learning it as a part, it's because we will not be covering any words with this kanji in it when we start learning words within sentences in a few videos. That's true for any kanji that we only learn as parts. Make sure to get subscribed so that you don't miss when we actually start teaching those. Did I sell you on that? Well, it doesn't really matter because this kanji means cell. The official radical for cell is specialist. We can break it down into specialist, hat, and person's legs. There are 7 strokes in cell. We start with the specialist, kind of smushed together on top, and then draw the hat just below it, the full width of the kanji. There are no left and right parts for this one. We then draw person's legs under the hat. Generally speaking, the legs will probably not be connected to the hat, though in some fonts or styles, it may appear that they're connected. Apparently, this kanji used to have the kanji for bai in the lower part, instead of hat and person's legs. That's likely the part that indicated the meaning. The version we are learning was adopted as an abbreviation for that, and is the one used in modern Japanese. So it kinda lost that hint of meaning in the parts. But it is very common, so you'll get used to it fast, I think. For our story, we're going to say that a specialist can sell anything, even a pair of sexy legs with a hat on, especially if he's wielding a broadaxe. You may remember that in our story for hat, we said that anything connected to the top of the hat changed the special power that it gave you. So you could also use a story like this. This hat gives the hat wearer the skills of a specialist, which makes it easier for them to sell stuff. Which do you prefer? When you can read this kanji, and you read it in a word, that word will likely have something to do with reading, because this kanji means read. The official radical for read is word, bringing us full circle on this lesson. The parts are word and cell. The kanji for read has 14 strokes, meaning we have the 2 highest stroke order counts to date in the same lesson. You can be angry if you want. We start by writing the 7 strokes in the word on the left part, followed by the specialist, hat, and person's leg parts from cell. It will likely take you a while to really get the balance down for this kanji, but it'll be excellent practice. Make sure to keep the person's legs separate from the hat part for the most part. Notice that the left leg and person's leg usually sweeps down under the mouth from the word part of it. Historically, the part on the right of this kanji was not cell, nor was it the old version of cell. Instead, there was a 4 thrown in there. Regardless, those parts were chosen for their Chinese reading at the time, not for any special meaning, apparently. And I don't think it will help you memorize this one very much anyway. I'm personally happy they simplified it. For our story, we'll go with salesmen take the words people say and sell them for people to read. As in a book. They sell books. But I can't say that because it would ruin our first kanji for next week. Which brings us to the Lesson 16 quiz. In this section of the video, I'll show you a flashcard with the English meaning for a kanji. Pause the video when we show each card and try to remember how to write that kanji. Next, write it on your hand with your finger or on a piece of paper. Then press play and see if you were right. The best way to remember kanji you just learned is to search your memory for the story we taught you, or the one you made based on the English word on the flashcard. Our first card is sell. Next is word. Just a few more. Here's story. And then there's language. Finally, we have read. Let us know how many you got right down in the comments. You can learn the next 5 kanji by clicking here, if the video is already out. If you don't want to wait, you can continue learning with our level 1 kanji flashcard deck for ANKI on ToKiniAndy.com. We're also releasing kanji series videos early for all the members there, so check it out if you want a head start.